start off by talking about the NBA. Who, what, when, and where? Well, we know where, Orlando. What? Games. Who? Well, that's another story. Joining us to talk about that, among other things, guy that does an outstanding job as beat writer for The Advocate, NOLA.com, covering the Pelicans, Christian Clarke. Hey, Christian, always a pleasure. Welcome to the show. Good evening to you.
Hey, Ken. Thank you for having me. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around the fact that we're just doing this, and the NBA is going to this bubble at a time when cases are going up by a lot nationwide.
Yeah, it's really just a strange reality we find ourselves in, because Florida was Exhibit A in terms of, a few cases, opening the state, everything imaginable looked great, and then all of a sudden it didn't look so great. So there's that concern, the social justice concerns, the free agency concerns, and injury concerns. I mean, there are so many concerns and so many things to consider. Got until Wednesday, and so far what we've seen is Trevor Ariza, Davis Bertans, who say they're not going to participate. Anybody else to this point, before we talk about how many might pull out of this?
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody else, officially say I'm not going to be a part of this. From a Pelicans perspective, we should know more later in the week. Derek Favors, just one of the question marks in my mind, because he is a free agent this summer. This could be one of his last opportunities to get a payday. He told The Athletic a couple of days ago that he is probably in. JJ Redick, another veteran guy, 1 year left in his deal here. Yeah, he pretty much said on his own podcast that he's probably in. So that kind of eliminates two question marks in my mind. And Wednesday is the day that players have to notify the NBA as well as the Players Association in writing whether they're in and they're out. So I imagine we'll have some answers here in a couple days.
Yeah, I don't know, and I said this on my show Saturday with Ed Daniels. I don't know that there's a right or a wrong in this at all. I think that people have to look at their own circumstances and situations and take into consideration everything imaginable to make their decision. It's easy to sit back and say, oh, they shouldn't go or they should go, and people are quick to do that, and understandably so. And yet, personally, I don't think there's a right and a wrong, since there's so many issues that you're dealing with. If it was just one issue, it'd be a different story. I think we'd all sit here and say, mitigate it and go. But that's not true. There's so many considerations here.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And, the thing is, we know a certain amount about players and, their families and their lives, but we don't have all the information. I mean, it's entirely possible that a player comes out and says, hey, I don't want to be a part of this. And, maybe they have a grandmother who's living with them or something, and that information doesn't become public. And, that's one of the reasons that they don't want to do this. I guess my point is that I just don't think there should be any judgment for anyone who decides, you know what, I think I'm good. I'm willing to accept, whatever the dock and pay is. I'm just going to sit this one out and hopefully be a part of the restart next year, which, by the way, they're shooting for December 1st. That's not that far away.
You're right. And, of course, they will coincide with a lot of things then, but they already do with the regular start of the season each and every year. Anyway, we look at what has transpired and what people are saying about this. We've seen every end of the spectrum. LeBron jumped out immediately and said, we're doing this, and wants to do it. Then you had the Dwight Howard comments. You had Kyrie Irving get involved, and some people strike back at him saying, wait a minute, you're not even playing, so why are you getting so involved? Then you had Kendrick Perkins spew his stuff. And, I mean, it's been the back and forth has been amazing. The end result is when they get there, it's pretty confining, to say the least, and it will be basketball, basketball, basketball. Some have said that's not what they signed up for, but is that really true? They signed up to play NBA basketball and get paid, so I understand the position of, well, that's not what I signed up for, but then again, I don't understand it based upon the fact that it is a league game and you're getting paid.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think the Toronto Raptors actually traveled to Florida today. The other 21 teams who are part of this restart will travel to Florida between July 7th and 9th to the NBA's bubble. I mean, just the amount of time that these guys are going to have to live, on site, a minimum. I mean, let's say the Pelicans don't even make the play-in tournament. Well, they're going to have to be there for 5 weeks, away from their families. On one hand, I kind of hear you that this is a tough situation for Americans everywhere, and a lot of people are having to sacrifice across all industries. I mean, people in the restaurant industry are, to get paychecks right now, like they're having to go into work and be at risk of contracting this. So, there's risk for everybody of just going to work right now. But these guys can't have family members in the bubble until after the first round of the playoffs. I mean, they're going to be in there for 6-7 weeks without family members. That's a long time, especially for the guys in the league who've got young kids. I mean, these guys make a lot of money. They can pay to get someone to help their wives out with daycare, but still, that's a long time for a father to be away from young kids.
It really is, and here in this country, the NBA and the NHL are probably going to be the guinea pigs of sorts, for lack of a better description, for everybody else that follows. College football, professional football, high school football, any other sport that follows, as to what it's going to look like, feel like, how safe it is, and so forth, because I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. I really don't.
Yeah. I mean, this is just an experiment. And, I mean, when you just sit down and look at the timeline of what the NBA is trying to pull off over the next couple of months, it's, really ambitious and audacious. And I think, we at least have to prepare for the possibility that, hey, they tried this thing and they put together a really good plan. I mean, I sat down and read all 113 pages of their restart plan, and I really do think it is a plan. And I've heard people a lot smarter than me say, this is really well thought out. But even with all that, I think we have to be prepared for the possibility that this doesn't work. I mean, say, there's an outbreak among a team during the playoffs. What did they do? There's really no plan for that, and they'd have to figure that out on the fly. And, it's right now, all the players will be living on the bubble. It's only kind of a bubble. It's some people, the Disney support staff, are allowed to go in and out. I don't think they can require those people to live on site, and they're taking precautions, but not everybody is going to be living inside the bubble permanently either.
No. The Pelicans, of course, have their roster secured, but there are teams that do not, including the Nuggets, the Kings, the Grizzlies, the Clippers, the Spurs, the Suns, the Thunder, and the Trailblazers. So, again, there's a lot of conjecture about what might happen. There's a lot of uncertainty about what might happen, but we certainly will have a greater picture by Thursday of this week to be certain. And then, of course, where the Pelicans are concerned, this is a motivated team, a young team, probably eager to get back at it with the veteran presence, as you mentioned. Once Redick decides he's playing, which it looks like he is, Favors looks like he's playing, of course, Etuan Moore. The other question mark would be Drew Holiday, because his wife is pregnant again, and we all know, her history physically. So I guess there would be at least some concern about Drew Holiday, perhaps. Yeah.
I mean, I think, I don't know, the specifics of, you had an operation to remove a brain tumor. I just don't know the medical specifics of that, if that makes you more at risk. That's something I guess I would have to look into. But, yeah, that's certainly, one of the biggest, if not the biggest question marks on the Pelicans roster. I mean, obviously if Drew decides not to do it, and who knows, you have to respect that decision. But from a pure basketball standpoint, making the playoffs would be really difficult without him. I mean, Drew just wears so many different hats for this team. I mean, just think about all the different things that he did this year. When Lonzo was struggling early in the year, he's the starting point guard. When Lonzo picked it up, he moved to off ball, which is, I think, more natural position for him. He's guarding the best perimeter player every game. He's one of the few players on the roster who can create his own shot consistently and get other guys involved. So, that's a huge loss. But we're just going to have to see because I don't think anybody knows for sure right now.
Visiting with Christian Clarke of The Advocate at NOLA.com, 260-1061, if you'd like to join in the conversation. Zion Williamson, the latest information pertaining to the agent accusations and such, certainly look like it's gone in his favor, correct?
Yeah, actually, his legal team, filed a motion that went public today, and they asked the judge in North Carolina to make a decision. They're like, this thing's been going on for a while. Let's do this. And I'm no legal expert, but for everything I've read and people I've talked to, I think he's got a pretty strong case to win this thing. Really, the key to it is the Uniform Athletes Agent Act, North Carolina law that requires agents to register with the state while they make contact with athletes while they're still in school. There's no disputing on either side that Gina Ford of Prime Sports was not registered with the state of North Carolina when she reached out to Williamson's camp. I mean, there are text messages you can look at while Williamson was still playing at Duke. There's no dispute. And, the definition of a student athlete under the UAA is anybody who engaged in athletics and college. So I think that Zion has a real good shot at winning this case.
Then there's the concern of the coaching staff as well, with Alvin Gentry and Jeff Bezdelik and their ages and the risk and so forth, which has been brought up on several occasions. And I've said from day one they deserve the opportunity to be on the bench and coach their team if they choose to do so. And again, that is another ongoing issue, and I think there's so much that's applicable there. But the final analysis, I got to believe they're going to be given the opportunity, right?
That's among the most interesting questions of what has to be determined. Because my personal opinion, I agree with you. Everybody who has the information has a personal decision to make, and it's even possible this becomes a legal fight. I saw Alvin Gentry's agent Warren McGarry tell ESPN, I hope it doesn't have to come to that. Because I guess there is a legal argument that this is age discrimination if you don't allow somebody over the age of 65 to coach and do their job. And what Warren McGarry was arguing was, hey, this could hurt my employees' future opportunities to be employed. We know that Alvin Gentry only has 1 year left on his deal here. Mike D'Antoni, another one of McGarry's clients. It's kind of a tenuous situation in Houston with an owner who seems like he could be kind of hard to work with. So I think all of that is really valid. And, yeah, hopefully it doesn't have to become a legal situation.
Once they do get there, in terms of prospects for the Pelicans, I got to believe their prospects are pretty good. This was a team that had won 21 of its last 34, a team that had a lot of juice. Barring, knock on wood, any concerns, there aren't any real injury problems to deal with. And, again, the motivation aspect is there too. So I would think that this is a team to watch and a team that really could actually thrive in this circumstance.
Yeah, I think that's definitely valid. I mean, I think, one of the best things the Pelicans have going for them is that their young guys are hungry. I remember Brandon Ingram saying at the All-Star break, I can't wait to get back to playing because we're finally healthy, and I'm so excited about what we can be. I think the young guys are kind of itching, and I think it's great that it's looking like they're going to get at least 8 pretty high-stakes games under their belts. A lot of these guys in their early 20s.
Visiting with Christian Clarke of The Advocate. When you look around the league, anybody that might upset the apple cart, everybody pointing to the Lakers and Bucks and maybe the Clippers, and who knows, perhaps Toronto could put themselves in position to be competitive for the title. Is there anybody else that really could sneak up and possibly mess things up there with these contenders?
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting. in my mind, I think we're looking at a finals of 4 teams unless there are serious injuries. I mean, I expect either the Lakers or the Clippers in the West, unless one of the key guys goes down, and I expect either Milwaukee or Toronto in the East. Those are the teams I like. I still like Toronto a lot, even though they did lose Kawhi. That was one of my favorite teams to watch this year. So I don't know, maybe I'm a little too partial to them just because I enjoy watching them play. But man, I think one of those key guys would have to go down for it not to be, either the Clippers, Lakers, or the Bucks holding up the championship trophy.
To me, the strangest team is Philadelphia because they've got Joel Embiid, who, when he shows up, I don't know that there's anybody more talented in the league, but there's inconsistency and attitude swings. And then there's Ben Simmons, who can't throw it in the ocean from 10 or 12 feet, and yet he's dominant in every other phase. But I mean, listen, we've watched him since LSU, and we continue to scratch our heads. How can you not work on a shot to at least develop a mid-range game? It's just perplexing. He won't shoot the ball. Is it a lack of confidence, or is it simply the fact that he just doesn't want to do it? It's really hard to imagine when you watch Philadelphia play. They got a ton of talent. They should be better than they are.
It's so interesting with Ben Simmons and the three ball. I mean, his coaches begged him multiple times this year, like, please, God, shoot it when you're open. I mean, I think at this point, you almost have to think that a guy is just overly worried about looking silly or fear of failure. I mean, it's just kind of his duty to his teammates to try those shots when he's wide open. So it is a real head scratcher. I mean, Philly is such an interesting team because, I think things like fit and maybe skill sets not overlapping a bunch is more important in the regular season than the playoffs. I mean, I think in the playoffs, it's just a little bit more about pure talent. So, yeah, they are one of those teams who it's easy to think why they could be more successful in the postseason than the regular season. And their head coach is rumored to be, a guy who might not be there for a while, even though a lot of people really like Brett Brown. So they're certainly an interesting team. I guess, Ben Simmons was at least able to get healthy during this time, so that's one plus for them.
Final thought, even though you cover the NBA, the future of college basketball is pretty intriguing. When you see top players in high school opting not to go to college and to go play in Europe or play in G Leagues or whatever else, and now you have the dynamic of, well, maybe there's a way to compensate student athletes on the collegiate level. It really throws the whole college basketball thing into a strange place. You got the one-and-done rule in place right now, which I've never been a fan of, not so much because I love college basketball, but because of the nature of it. I kind of like the baseball model, which is if you want to go pro, do it out of high school, but if you don't, you're locked in for 3 years. And the NFL model, of course, is different. You got to go 3 years before you become eligible. Never been a big fan of the one and done. Now you've got the complication of players being lured to go play somewhere else without having to go to school, because the flip side of that is obvious. Ben Simmons was the perfect exhibit to point out as to what's wrong with the system. Everybody knows he pretty much stopped going to class. He even got suspended for a half, and it was kind of a known fact that he was going to be gone. Therefore, he paid little or no attention to the school and really kind of alienated teammates at LSU. So what about the state of college basketball and where it's going from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Ben Simmons, it's pretty clear he's a guy who believes it. It was kind of dumb that I even had to go to college in the first place. I think the one and done rule, if you're a real big fan of college basketball, yeah, I can understand, why you wouldn't like it. I think it can be beneficial. I mean, I certainly think Zion used that time to become a much better player, and I think he would tell you that he learned a lot and really enjoyed that 1 year of college experience. But it does seem like college is going to have to get to this point in a couple of years where they're just legally compensating players. And I mean, I think they should. I mean, we are cold-hearted capitalists in America, and I would love to see an economist or someone try to just estimate the value that Zion Williamson generated at the college basketball level during his 1 year. It'd be insane, and legally he wasn't allowed to get a cut of that. So I think we are headed there eventually. It just is a matter of how long it's going to take.
We encourage you to read his work in The Advocate and at NOAA.com. And, of course, follow him on Twitter at @CClarke3000. Christian Clarke does an excellent job in covering the NBA and the Pelicans. And, Christian, you'll be covering this thing in strange fashion, but at least it looks like we'll be talking about basketball games pretty soon. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's fun in some ways to get to cover something kind of unprecedented, right when I started this job. So thanks so much for having me on.
Pleasure, Christian. Thank you. Keep up the good work. It's Christian Clarke